Well, it's been a wild night across much of southeastern Australia, and there's no sign of conditions letting up this morning as a cold front continues to move across the country, bringing with it destructive winds and heavy rainfall. Victorians are being told to stay home and avoid unnecessary travel as storms sweep across the state. In fact, the winds are so strong they've been likened to a Category 2 cyclone.
Tasmania is also bearing the brunt of the weather, with evacuation orders along the Derwent and Styx rivers, and it follows a chaotic weekend with hundreds of calls to the SES and tens of thousands without power. It's a fast-moving situation this morning, and we'll have full coverage for you, starting with Selena Ross, who's at an evacuation centre in the Derwent Valley, and Mietta Adams in Melbourne. Good morning to you both. Selena, to you first. How have things developed overnight there in Tasmania?
Well, this area that I'm in here in New Norfolk, we're outside the evacuation centre here. This has been downgraded to a watch and act from an emergency last night. But further upriver, it is still an emergency warning with people told to evacuate from their homes. We don't have a clear picture just yet of how things have gone overnight, but we understand that there are about 70 homes that the SES was concerned about yesterday, and they went and visited those properties and told people to evacuate, and they were hopeful that most of those people had left their homes. The concern there was either that the houses would be inundated or that they would be isolated as the floodwaters cut off roads. So, you know, this early in the morning, we're trying to get a clear idea of what has been happening overnight. It's not raining now, which is good, but the rivers around this area are already so swollen that the concern is that those levels are still rising and that floods could still occur. While this area is still at a watch and act, there are also plenty of other communities around Tasmania that are also at watch and act levels, and there were destructive winds across the state, particularly in the north and northwest last night as well, with many more trees coming down and blocking roads. And there is still a severe weather warning in place for the Bass Strait Islands and King Island, for Bass Strait Islands and all of the west coast of Tasmania. There are about 38,000 properties without power at the moment, with over 200 outages right across the state. So we have been dealing with this for, it feels like, almost a week already, but this is still continuing, and emergency services are going to still be watching and seeing how things go throughout the day and seeing whether any of those watch and acts do pick up even further.
All right, Mietta, what are conditions like in Victoria, waking up this morning to lots of trees and all sorts of things across the road? That wind was howling last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was, Bridget. It was a hugely gusty night last night. Victorians are waking up to the 10th consecutive day for severe wind warnings for most parts of the state. Now, last night at St Kilda Marina, they recorded winds up to 113 kilometres an hour, and up at Falls Creek, it actually reached 131 kilometres an hour. A new watch and act to prepare to take shelter has been added to Melbourne and surrounding suburbs, as well as down in the Mornington Peninsula and in Wilson's Prom. Now, the SES has also been kept extremely busy with 900 calls since midnight. In the past 24 hours, they've had 980 calls for trees alone and 250 for building damage. And that's similar to this house here in Parkdale, here in Melbourne's southeast, where the bricks have fallen out from this house. Now, the SES COO, Tim Weebush, has said this is one of Victoria's most extreme and significant weather events of the calendar year, and that we haven't seen gusts like this since 2021. There's also been 60,000 Victorians that are also waking up without power, and we've been warned it could take days for that to come back on. The advice remains the same, and that is to avoid travel where possible, look out for debris on roads, and never to enter floodwaters. And we're hoping that as the day moves on, that these winds start to ease from the afternoon into the early evening.